Today, I want to show a very simple embroidery template. The aim is to create a preview for a name on a bathrobe. For the final production, only the content of the form field is sent to the manufacturing company. Therefore, we only need to create a form field for this template and not a print document. So let's start. First, I create a new template and save it under the name bathrobe. Now I need an image for my preview. To do this, I click on the Image tab on the left and on the plus at the top to upload the image for the preview. I adjust the image and the page a little. Now the text controlled via a form field is still missing. I now create a form field for this. I do this by clicking on the Form tab on the left and then on the plus button at the top. In the window that opens, I replace the default text with Name and click on OK. Now I simply drag the form field on this dotted handle onto my document. This automatically gives me a text that is controlled via a form field. Now I want to make further settings. There are two ways to open the window with the form field settings. Either I click on the form field and then on the small white arrow in the pink area. This opens the drop-down menu with the properties. Or I simply click on the small properties icon. I can now make different settings here. Since I want the label name on the buyer site to be capitalized, I change the small n to a capital N here. I also want to limit the text length for the buyer to 12 characters, so I enter 12 here under Max Characters. Another important setting is to switch on Mandatory. This ensures that the customer actually enters their name in the form field later. If the customer forgets to do this by mistake, he will be reminded with a message. After I have made all the settings, I click on OK. In the text field on the right, I can see that a variable has been automatically created for my text. Now I'm going to change the text because I want it to look like it's embroidered on the bathrobe. I click on the Fonts tab in the resource area on the right and then on the plus at the top to upload a suitable font for the embroidery machine. In my case, I simply uploaded a sample font from Google Fonts. I click on my text frame and then on the font I have uploaded. This replaces the standard font with my embroidery font. Also, this is a bathrobe for a woman, so I enter a woman's name in the form field. Then I adjust the size of my text to the size in which the name will be embroidered on the bathrobe. So far, the text just looks flat, so I'll adjust it to the folds of the bathrobe first. I click on the Warp tab on the right, and then select Mesh. I zoom in a little here so that you can better see what I'm doing. I increase the number of columns to 12 in order to achieve a better reproduction of the bathrobe folds. I can now distort individual points here. Or I select a point and press C on my keyboard to select a whole column. The same works for a whole row by selecting a point and pressing her on my keyboard. I can now distort the mesh and move points until the font fits perfectly with the folds of the bathrobe. I think the distortion looks good. Now I need an effect to reproduce the fluffy fabric of the bathrobe, which touches the edge of the embroidery. I select the turbulence effect for this. This is probably a bit too much turbulence, so I set Scale as low as possible and increase the frequency a little. As the embroidery is flatter than the thick fabric of the bathrobe, there's a slight shadow above the font. I'm going to use Drop Shadow. There I first change the position of the shadow because it should be above the lettering. I also reduce the blur effect as it is only a small shadow. To choose a suitable shadow color, I use the pipette and select a color from the shadow of the bathrobe. At the end, I give the text a slight light from above to give the embroidery more shape. I select Inner Glow for this. First, I change the color by using the pipette to select a light color of the bathrobe. Then I change the position of the light, which should only be visible at the top of the font. I reduce the blur effect, which is far too strong. And then I reduce the opacity, because I only want a little light on the text. Now I zoom out again to have a look at the result. I am quite happy with it, and I think I can leave it as it is. But there is one more thing I have to do at the end. Now I click on the shopping cart at the top right to switch to the buyer side and test my preview there. As I previously set a maximum number of letters for the customer in the form field settings, I am now also shown how many letters I can still enter when entering a new name. Everything looks good. I click on the Close button to return to the editor. I then save my template there. I hope this video was helpful to create your own photorealistic previews.